What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Iggles Fly podcast. I'm your host, JT. I'm back again. So listen, welcome back to another episode. I know I was absent last week. Apologize for that, but I'm going to be recapping weeks 1 and week 2. Obviously, we're going to talk about last night's game. It is currently Tuesday, so I'm going to be recapping last night's game, and it has been a wild one. I'm also going to be doing the Lions game as well, so please bear with me. I got my Eagles playoff tee on. It's looking good, man. It's looking good. I don't want to make no bold predictions, but let's go ahead and get into the show. Obviously, we're going to talk about week 1 and week 2. I'm going to give you some points, and we're going to do some news around the league, and then do some predictions for next week. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So the first thing let's talk about last week. Let's rewind a little bit. Let's go to the Lions. I thought the Lions game was very telling for not just the Eagles, but for the Lions as well. The Lions have really squared away themselves. That's a total 180 of a team. That team looked completely squared away. That team had almost no, I want to say that team, it was hard to get a beat on them. They were just really, really solid. They hit hard. They were disciplined. There wasn't a whole lot of penalties. And the inverse is that the Eagles came out and had a couple, here and there. So, and that was something that I was kind of worried about, but it's week 1. Obviously the Eagles have squared some of that stuff away. Last night's officiating, I don't want to ever blame the refs, but that game was, they were calling delay a game, quick, the clock would hit 0 and then it would automatically be delay a game. They're calling it real quick. So that was the emphasis for those guys. But hopefully that's not what it's going to be like in the future, because there's some plays where you get it off just in time with a second left or just as the clock hits 0, it's delay a game. But, that was crazy. Either way, I'm not going to sit here and blame the refs, but I will say this. Week 1 was really, I think it was a great test for the Eagles to open up with, because they immediately opened up with adversity, right? They opened up and they had them down big, but they really had no answers for what was going on. They won on paper, but it reminds me of Dallas last year. You know what I mean? Dallas would win these really close games, but they'd be down 21 points or whatever, right? And then they'd have to come back and win. And that's kind of how the Eagles won in week 1, which is they were down so much, or not down, but they were up, but the Lions just kept fighting. You just kind of knew that they have to keep scoring to stay in this game. And I thought it was going to be a high scoring game in the episode that I did before the season opener, and I had the Eagles winning 31. I think it was 31-28 or 31 something like that, 31-28, and they ended up winning 38-35. So high scoring game, really exciting game to watch. My immediate sort of reaction was, obviously you're going to have to stop the run. DeAndre Swift had an incredible night. DeAndre Swift is a great player, Philly native. Shout out to DeAndre Swift. He's a savage. He's going to be great this year. But the I think the bigger story was that the Lions looked so squared away. The Eagles came in with big expectations, and the Lions just kind of punched them in the mouth, and the Eagles had to respond to that. And I thought that was a great character win for the Eagles, and I think that was a great push and a great build off of game for Detroit. So my hat's off to Detroit. I fell in love with them literally watching. Excuse me. I fell in love with them watching Hard Knocks. They really, they really squared it away. So, but yeah, Detroit played well. Let's go ahead and pivot now to the Vikings. And it's almost like the defense had a 360, right? The defense couldn't do anything against the Lions, and now against who everyone kind of has as a dark horse to come out of the NFC North, in the Vikings, who beat the Packers last week. They came out and they were hot. They came out from the jump, first drive, they went down, they scored. They had a couple 80-yard scores. The punter for the Vikings is unbelievable, but the Eagles are very good at that methodical drive the ball down the field, methodical way of doing things, and so it's really, really, really exciting to watch. I'm super excited for the season. If they keep this up, this kind of reminds you of like old school style football where it's just smash mouth, good defense kind of thing. And granted, it's only been 2 weeks, so you never know how far is it really going to take you. I wouldn't say this is an easy part of the schedule at all, especially with Detroit. Obviously, what they did this week was they go and they beat the brakes off of the Commanders, right? Scored 36 points, back-to-back, over 35 points scored. I mean, I'm telling you, Detroit's looking good this year. But with that being said, right, again, we're so early into the season. We're so early into things. The league is still kind of shuffling, and you got to have one clear guy emerge or one clear team or front runner emerge. I think the only one that's really emerged has been Buffalo so far. I think even Buffalo is more of a lock to me than I think Kansas City is. I think they're more of a lock to me than I think the Buccaneers are, in my opinion, in week 2. Not like, I'm not speaking like week 16. I'm talking about week 2 right now. I think the Buffaloes are probably the furthest team ahead of everyone else, just because of the way those guys are playing. But yeah, I mean, to me, the Eagles are playing well. Is this going to last down the stretch? We have to figure it out. This is not an easy stretch, but I think it is one of the easier stretches to begin the season with. It's not like, Dallas, right, where Dallas had to start off with the Buccaneers and they had to play Cincinnati, who Cincinnati might, it looks like they're on the decline right now. They just have a gauntlet to run, and the Eagles aren't necessarily like that. It kind of gets dicey towards the middle, but you could very well, make an argument that this is like best case scenario for the Eagles, to start off 2-0, get a couple wins against some pretty solid teams, and then build off of that moving forward. So, but it's not where you start. It's where you finish. We all know that. So let's not get hyped. Let's not talk about MVP. Let's not talk about any of that stuff. But let us talk about, though, the Vikings and some notes I have down here. Hurts had 333 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, which I don't really put that interception on Jalen, because he threw it. It was a screenplay. He threw it up and over the offensive line. He put the ball where it needed to be. It just bounced off of Philip. It just bounced off of Kenny Gainwell's hands. He had his hands stretched up. It bounced off his hands and ended up in the chest of Jordan Hicks. So that's really not his fault. It's not like it was a bad read. It was where it was supposed to be. The ball was on time. It just kind of popped up. And, what are you going to do? Sometimes it's not, is a running back. Yeah, he has great hands, but what are you going to do? Right? There's not really much you can do about that. And then they didn't even capitalize off it anyway, because Kirk Cousins threw an interception, and then we got the ball back anyway. So, he had 2 rushing touchdowns. One was like a big boy run, right? And then the other one was a punch in from, I think it was like the 1 or 2 yard line during the first drive, and then the second one was a big boy run. Threw a lot of arm tackles, spinning, kind of moving, and getting down into the end zone, which was crazy to watch. I mean, it's been crazy to watch this guy grow and really square away in the system. I mean, this is the first time since he was in high school that he's had the same head coach and the same play caller heading into the second year, right? It's the first time he's had continuity within the system that he's playing in, right? I mean, granted, yeah, he had Nick Saban, but the same play caller, that's a big thing. It's really cool to see the maturity. It's really cool to see the work that he's put in. I'm super excited. I think, again, I'm not gonna put anything crazy out there, but he's playing as one of the good young quarterbacks now. Is he on a level of maybe a Josh Allen, or on the level of like whoever? No, not really, right? But again, we'll have to see. Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and all those guys, like all those, 6'4", 6'6", Twin Towers kind of guys that are just ripping it all over the field. Those guys are special dudes. I think if I had to compare Jalen to anyone right now, it'd probably be like Russell Wilson or Doug Flutie or something like that, right? Guy that can move around and can throw on the run. But he's really emerging, so far in week 2, it seems like he is going to be the guy moving forward. In 2 weeks from now, he could have 2 pretty butt games, and then you can, cut this tape on and make fun of me. I'll welcome it. But I think right now he's playing fantastic. It's exciting. So let's pivot here from offense to defense. You got Slay. Slay had 2 interceptions versus Justin Jefferson. Now, a lot of people were like, "Oh, Justin Jefferson's gonna route Slay up. It's gonna be this. It's gonna be that." Slay didn't allow a reception when he was matched up with Justin Jefferson. He didn't allow a reception, and he had 2 interceptions versus him. Right. So I don't know if this is being a wide receiver is kind of interesting, right? Because you're the most independent person out there, right? Like you're solely dependent on a guy getting you the ball. You're solely dependent on a quarterback throwing the ball your way and protecting you and putting you in a good position to make plays. But at the same time, if you don't, right? Like if you don't get those plays, you don't get those catches, you don't put up the big numbers, it's almost they kind of exclusively look at you first. Right? Where it's like, if you're doing well, the quarterback gets the credit, but if you're doing bad, it's all your fault. You know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of this weird like dichotomy that wide receivers have. And I don't think that, Kirk Cousins had an awful game. Kirk Cousins had a truly, truly, truly awful game against the Eagles. And I really don't even I don't understand how I don't understand how he could go from, he's beaten the Packers, who are pretty good, and, they're the kings of the North, right, and stuff like that. But then they play the Eagles, and to me, the Eagles defense has a lot of stuff that still needs to work out. Like I'll talk about later, Hassan Reddick is being dropped into coverage a lot. I think Hassan should just exclusively be a pass rusher. You know what I mean? Like, if you want a coverage guy, if you want a coverage guy, you want something like that. Put Nakobe Dean in there. You know what I mean? Or put somebody else that can, run and cover and do all these different things. I just don't understand. I don't get the like why are you having Hassan Reddick drop into coverage against Justin Jefferson, right? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like that kind of stuff really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And don't get me wrong, Hassan Reddick is a monster, but the dude is a monster in the pass rush. He's not really known for his interceptions or anything like that. He's a monster when he's has his hand in the dirt, or when he's a wide 9 or a 6 or whatever you want to call it. 6 standing up, a wide 9 is super out to the far with a hand in the dirt. That's kind of where he's best. Right, that's where he's best, is rushing the quarterback and getting the quarterback off their spot and getting them to move. So I don't understand what his role is purely in Jonathan Gannon's system. I guess that's another thing they'll have to iron out, but I don't think they're necessarily maximizing Hassan that much. But either way, I went on this whole thing about Hassan Reddick, but I forgot where I was going with it. Oh, Justin Jefferson. So I don't think it's the fault of Justin Jefferson at all. I think Kirk Cousins had an awful game, and that can be attributed to a lot of things. Irv Smith dropped a wide open touchdown. When there was a ton of drop passes, open guys, just really small dink and dunk stuff that could have started Kirk on like a little bit of a rhythm, which is kind of dead, in the water. So. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting dichotomy they got there. I forgot where I was going before. I went off on Hassan Reddick thing, and I kind of knew I was, but it was a good sort of example or parallel about usages within the system. But let's just move on to Avonte Maddox. Maybe I'll remember where I was going with it later. But Avonte Maddox had an interception, really elevated to grab an interception, I believe it was to either Irv Smith or Justin Jefferson again, but he got some ups and went and got it. And then, Dalvin Cook, another one. The Vikings really have a very good offense, but it was just really rattled, and they were in a hole to begin with, so it kind of threw off their whole thing. They like to really run and mix it up with Dalvin Cook and throw off of the play action, and that's kind of where they're best, when they're getting a lot of linebacker movement. But they just weren't able to do that, right? They weren't able to really get Dalvin Dalvin Cook going. And then by the time they knew it, they were down, they were tied, and then they were up 14, then they were up 7, and then 21, and then 24 at the half. So, it was a little much, right? It was a little much. The Eagles kind of piled on points quick and forced Kirk into throwing it a whole lot. And that's not really I wouldn't say that's the whole strength, of the Vikings sort of system is not Kirk Cousins dropping back, 35, 40 times a game and throwing it. They like to mix things up. Kind of the same thing with Jalen Hurts. You want to mix it up. You don't want him dropping back into the pocket all these different times because, you don't. There's very few quarterbacks you can ask to do that anyway. Tom is probably one of them. Josh, I can name all the people I just named earlier: Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, all these different people. You can trust them dropping back 50 times and throwing it, but to do it, to consistently do it, it's nearly, it's just not going to happen. Right, it's just not going to happen all the time. But teams that are well balanced tend to go a lot farther. But let's go continuing on. Defense was great against the run, which they were not, which is a sentiment I think again to Detroit and that offensive line that they have, and DeAndre Swift. The Eagles really bottled up Dalvin Cook. Josh Sweat returned to midseason form. He had 2 sacks. Fletch had a strip sack, which. It was a strip sack, but he just kind of batted the ball out of Kirk Cousins' hands while he tried to step him into the pocket. And then Hassan Reddick, I think, we're talking about this, again, Hassan Reddick drops in the coverage a whole lot. I don't really like that. Again, I went on this whole tangent before about maximum usage. I think that he's much better hand in the dirt, wide 9, 6, things like that. TJ Edwards, I was surprised. He had a couple pass breakups. He had a couple big hits. I mean, he caught a couple guys coming across the middle in a different way, right? Like he caught them, he laid a hit on somebody, man. And so was Marcus Epps. I mean, Marcus Epps was he was absolutely tagging Irv Smith. He tagged him like 3 times. These guys, they were playing physical, and that's what I like to see. And it was all legal. I didn't think that it was, necessarily, ooh, that was gross. I don't think it was necessarily, it was all clean stuff. It was all shoulder to shoulder, things like that. I think that you can sort of argue, one of them when Irv Smith went down, they kind of came in and popped him. That was a little borderline, but I think that the team's playing physical and you like to see that. What the fuck is in my mouth? Damn. That's why you don't eat before you do a podcast. You get all kinds of stuff in your teeth, and it's annoying. So, let's go. Oh, I got it. There it is. It's going now. Whatever that was. All right. So let's go to Miles Sanders. Also had a great game. Had a couple really clutch first downs on the last play of the drive. Converted. I mean, really just talk about finding yardage, and what you want to see from Miles is he had a couple big chunk plays, 6, 7, 8 yards. And then I also, talk about like a 2-pronged attack. It's like the Vikings sold out on trying to get A.J. Brown all the way out of here. And Devontae Smith just started routing them up. I mean, Devontae Smith was on Cam Dantzler, corner, another young corner, I believe, taken at least within the past couple years. I think I think it's maybe his second year in the league. So he had Cam Dantzler a couple times on those deep dig routes, a couple hitches that he had over the middle, things like that. And the Vikings were running a lot of cover too, a lot of trying to stop the deep play, and so on and so forth. And so the Jalen was able to sting him down the middle a couple times. So it was kind of cool to see that, to see that the Eagles sort of have a dynamic duo, right? Like they really do. I mean, Quez Watkins caught a 50-something yard touchdown pass. And then, it was week 1 was the A.J. Brown show. Excuse me. Week 1 was the A.J. Brown show, 10 catches, 155 yards. Then it was the Devontae Smith and, Quez Watkins. It was the skinny Batman and the fast Batman show. Yesterday or last night, because those guys showed out. They went from, and that's just how crazy, or the amount of depth that they have is that, you're, as AJ Brown, you're going to get a lot of attention, and they're going to have to now, bottle up all these different people. Dallas Goedert had a good night. So I think Jalen had like in the first series, he had like he was 6 for 6, right? In his first series, and 5 different guys caught a pass. So it's good to see him. I think last year he was really going to his first read, really sticking on his first, maybe move to his second, and then trying to run. And now he's spreading the ball around a lot. I mean, that shows a tremendous amount of growth. I can't say this enough. I'm super excited for him. I'm really happy that, he kind of came in and proved everyone wrong. And this is almost like a revenge tour. This is great. But let's go ahead and switch now, right? With all that being said, let's talk about some news around the league. Let's do that. So first thing I want to talk about is Justin Fields. So if you don't know, the Packers and the Bears played Sunday Night Football. That was Sunday night, and the Packers won 27-10. Packers again. You heard the Packers. Or Aaron Rodgers is like, I own the Bears and all that stuff. So Justin Fields essentially had a. Well, I'll play the clip for you. Right. This is what he said.
I mean, it hurts more in the locker room than the Bears fans. I mean, because at the end of the day, they're not putting in any work. I see the guys in the locker room every day. I see how much work they put in. So
the fans ain't putting in no work. Now, to be fair, that's not really. If you think about it, that's not like a huge thing to say, right? Like that's not completely out of the realm of realism, and I'm kind of torn up on it because I'm on one hand, I'm a super fan of the Eagles, right? And on the other hand, I also have the show that you guys watch and hopefully like. And so if I put out a dud of a show or I go MIA for the whole summer like I did this time, I feel awful, right? I feel bad, but at the same time, it's almost if I put out a bad show or I put out something that's half-assed, right? It's not fair to you guys who enjoy the show or enjoy the level of quality that you've come to expect. So it is in some ways disappointing for me more so because I feel like I can put more work in and put better work in. But it's also disappointing as a fan because the expectations are high. The expectations of, this is my release. I save up money. I'm not necessarily, you're taking time out of your day to listen to me, taking time out of your day to watch me, and I'm eternally grateful for that. But, and for me personally, I would never be like, you guys ain't putting in no work. You guys aren't editing it. That's not who I am. But I think what he's trying to say and what he tried to say after a loss to a division rival, which kind of sucks, right? Is like, he's not saying the fans can't be upset, but he's saying that it hurts more so for the players because they work their whole lives, sacrifice a whole lot to be in a position to play, right? To be in a position to play at a high level, to be on an NFL roster, which is the pinnacle of football. And so that's on one side. I understand what he's trying to say, but then on the other side, it's like, you also have to understand that these fans, they're not like just a lot of fans they're not millionaires. They're not these super ultra rich people whose parents have money and they have money. A lot of football fans, right, are blue collar workers. They work 9 to 5. I work a 9 to 5. And you were able to save up money. And by the way, it's fucking expensive. It's fucking expensive to go to a game. It's expensive to buy the gear. It's expensive to, to support your team. It's an expense, So at the end of the day, we are working, right? You are working, and we're putting our money into something that we're passionate about. And so, and if you shit on anyone's passions, they're going to be upset about it, right? They're going to be upset if I say, this or that, or if I come at somebody for, I don't know, if I come at somebody, I'm like, well, why do you collect cars? That's so stupid. It's like, that's their passion. They like to do it, right? And it doesn't matter how they obtain the cars. It's sometimes, hey, look, I've had cars that, the AC doesn't work as well, and I could be critical of that. Or I've had cars who, the build quality isn't great, and I can complain about that because at the end of the day, I invested my money, right? I invest time to get money. So I literally invested my time, invested my money to buy this car or to support this team or to whatever. So you feel like you have a right to be critical over a team that at the end of the day you're supporting, and you're making sort of those, all these $1 million contracts, $100 million this, $100 million that. Those owners aren't paying you out of their pocket. You know what I'm saying? Like, the owners aren't, as rich as they are, the owners are not pulling $100 million out of their wallet and giving it to you, right? That $13 beer, right, that a father of three had to save up, a year and a half to get these good seats to take his family, to see a Bears game or a Packers game, that's who is ultimately paying your salary, is that $13 beer, that, fucking $10 hot dog, and those $400 a piece seats. Like, those are the things that are paying for that. So I think it was a little bit tactless, but I see both sides of it. Where on one side, as a fan, you're like, I support this team. Why would this guy, especially if I have your jersey, right? Like, if I buy your jersey, you know what I'm saying? So it's, I guess on one hand, it's like, you can get caught up in your own shit. You can get caught up in sort of have these self-aggrandizing things where it's like, well, I worked my ass off and I sacrificed this and I sacrificed that. And you're not completely right. But at the same time, it's like, there are other people around you, though, in America, especially. And what's the first thing they talk about? Football. When and not even just America, but like when guys retire and they move on to the next chapter of their life, move on from the NFL, the NBA, what is the first thing that they tell you? The NFL is a business, right? And businesses make money off of goods, off of products, and by selling them to the masses, right? And that's what that's all. I didn't, and I'm not expecting him to think that deep after he just ran his ass off, played his ass off. He's tired. He take a shower. He's probably hungry. Like, you're not expecting somebody to think that deep, right? And he's probably pissed off. So you get it, right? I understand it, but I guess I understand both sides. And so for me personally, while I don't necessarily disagree with what he's saying, because again, it hurts more to be a player and lose, but I think it was said in kind of an insensitive, dismissive way. And I think being a quarterback, you got to kind of expect that guys they're gonna twist your words, they're gonna say things, and of course they're gonna clip it out of context. But yeah, I feel bad if I don't know. It just, I see both sides, right? I see both sides, and I try to be as objective as possible. I'm not talking about him. I don't think Justin's a bad dude. I think he's fantastic, right? I think he's a great player. Don't know him personally at all, and I don't think this should be sort of a stamp on his character. I think that this is just, this is a case of just awful wording. Now, if he doubles down on it, then you're like, okay, like it's just common courtesy if you offend somebody to kind of see where they're coming from. That's how it should be. But at the end of the day, I feel like you just got to be a little bit more courteous to the fans, to just understand where your bread is buttered. Yes, you're a great athlete. Nobody's saying you're not. Yes, you sacrificed a lot of money or a lot of time with family and friends. Yeah, nobody's saying that you haven't sacrificed, but just understand that, look, this is where your bread's buttered. Nobody's better than anybody else, and don't act like you're on some kind of pedestal, or don't act like you're better than the fans because you're an athlete, right? Don't do that. So that's kind of my view on it. I would love to hear what some Bears fans think about it, or or whatever. But I don't know. I don't disagree with what he said. I just think that he said it in a there could have been a more tactful way to say this, is all I'm saying. Right. But let's go ahead and change to Jimmy G. So Jimmy G steps in for Trey Lance, who's out for the season with an ankle, and they completely railroad. I don't even know who they were playing. I forget who they were playing, but they completely railroaded whoever they were playing. And I mean, look, a lot of people are going to have a lot to say. They're going to say, well, why do we want to start Trey Lance? Listen, Trey Lance has physical tools that a lot of the league wants right now. right? Jimmy Garoppolo is, of course, going to be more comfortable because he's a veteran, right? He's been in the league a long time. B, he's this has been his system for a long time. He signed I don't even know how many years ago he signed, but he signed a few years ago, right? He's been in the system. I gotta say at least 3 years, right? He's been in the system a long time, and of course, like if I've been doing a job for 3 years and you have someone that just started, of course I'm going to know more than this guy that just started, regardless of if he has the capability to be better at this job than me. I still know more, and I'm still going to have more success in the immediate because of my knowledge. But by the time he catches up to me, or by the time he really starts to get comfortable, is when he's going to take off, right? And it's going to pay dividends. So you're not counting on the dividends aren't going to come right now, right? For the 49ers, the dividends are going to come down the road when Trey Lance gets better. So no, it's a big question mark, right? Like, it's a big question mark. You don't know if he's going to be a bona fide, if he's going to be this bona fide, like, Super Bowl quarterback. We don't know, but he has the tools to do so. And, of course, I don't know why people were shocked when Jimmy G, you mean to tell me a guy that, is again, veteran, did it for 3 years, comes in and has more immediate success? Of course he does, right? And this team isn't any different from last year, right? And they were pretty good last year. So it's not a shocker that Jimmy G played better when he stepped in, but it just sucks for Trey Lance because now he's not gonna have that year under his belt anymore. He's gonna have to start essentially all over again. And you feel awful for the guy, and he was already rife with controversy, which is why in a lot of ways, like, you have to respect the guys that just go all in. You know what I'm saying? You have to respect the guys that just go all in and say, look, this is our quarterback. We're trading anybody that could be competition to him. Because when you have this, right, and this is just the way sports media works now, is when you have a quarterback that's pretty good behind a quarterback that could be that could be elite, everyone's always looking at the pretty good quarterback. Like, it's your time. It's almost you. It's almost you. You know what I mean? And it's the same shit. Again, being an Eagles fan, dealing with the Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts thing, and the Carson Wentz, Nick Foles thing, we understand, right? But it's just constant. It's this constant, like, never ending, like, just carousel of people talking shit about your quarterback situation. So I respect guys like Belichick, or I respect guys that are like whatever, that are like, look, trade one of them, but we're sticking with one. We're sticking with one, trade his competition, and let's just move on, right? Because quarterback is one of the most overinflated things ever. You know what I mean? It's so, like, every quarterback is like, they're like, he has potential. He could be doing this. Is why guys like, Carson Wentz can go and get jobs anywhere, right? It's because everyone has this false hope, for a nice quarterback, right? Same thing with Daniel Jones, right? It's like people have this hope that he someday maybe will turn into something. It's like, sometimes you just gotta let sleeping dogs lie. You know what I'm saying? So, you expect what happened with Jimmy G, or you don't expect your Trey Lance to just, hurt his ankle, and prayers up for him. Hopefully he gets better. But you expect a guy who's been in a league for a long time to come in and kind of have an easier transition into the starting role. You should expect that. This is sports now. So Mike Evans, moving on from that, Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore had a big fight. Both were ejected from the game, and Mike Evans is suspended for one game, or the next game. So Tom Brady be starting fights, boy. Let me tell you something. Tom Brady was sorry. I don't know what happened to him, but ever since he went to Florida, he became like a big slime. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's man, Tom Breezy. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's now just, he's a Florida man. I almost said Philly. He's a Florida man now, Tom is, right? Like, Tom is just out here. He feels comfortable talking shit. And I like this Tom. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, I like this Tom Brady, bro. I do. I do like this version of Tom Brady. But Mike Evans, Mike Evans came out and said, oh, what's Tom Brady? What do you expect me to do? It's like, is it Tom Brady? Because I think Jameis Winston did the same thing, and Marshawn Lattimore, and you came in and laid him out a few years prior. So it seems like it's more so just Marshawn Lattimore, and whenever Mike Evans gets an opportunity to, he just hits him. And so there's definitely no love lost between these two. Again, Evans suspended for 1 game. Both of them were ejected after that brawl, Bucks versus Saints, and that brawl changed the game. Right, that brawl really gave the Bucks some swag, and it just took the air right out of the Saints' sails. And it finally went on to win. Finally, Tom Brady went on to win against the Saints in the regular season, which doesn't happen that often. Then Lions beat Washington. I saw this Twitter account, son. This Twitter account. I'm not going to say their name because I'm not going to give them any. I'm not going to give them the time of day, but they tweeted, they're like, oh, the Eagles gave up 35 points to the Lions, LOL, and then they got beat 36-27. So it's like, karma comes at you fast. That was just good to see that the Lions are a solid team now. I think people are going to stop writing off the Lions, hopefully, right? Because those guys are going to be they're serious. And then Dallas beats Cincinnati with Cooper Rush. Now, it seems like a trend with a lot of backup quarterbacks that they come in and the first game that they start, they seem to have this really good game, right? Because teams don't really have a lot of tape on them. They don't know how they're going to do or what teams don't know what other teams are cooking up. So it's it's a little bit of a guessing game, right? Where it's like if you start Joe Burrow's got a season and a half of tape to go back and watch and understand what he likes and what they like to do. You look at Tom Brady has 20 something seasons to go back and watch, and all these different guys have all these seasons you can go back and watch and say, okay, this is what he likes, this is what he doesn't like, this is his tendencies, blah 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 blah. But when you have a backup quarterback who maybe the last time that they played was 2-3 years ago and they played for 1 game, it's like, how do you really prepare for that? But they come out, they have an incredible game against some unsuspecting team, and then they wash out after that. I think that's kind of what Cooper Rush is going to do. I think he came out against Cincinnati, and Cincinnati just looks disjointed. Like, for some reason, they look like they've had this real hangover from the Super Bowl. They're just not very disciplined. That offensive line looks worse. You know what I mean? I don't understand how they can bring in all these relatively good guys that have been pretty solid throughout. Did I think that Cincinnati was going to have a top 5 offensive line? No. But you thought they were going to be better than what they did last year, which is allow a record number of sacks. But no, he was sacked 6 times. Micah Parsons lives in the backfield all game. It was tough. It was real tough to watch, pulling for Cincinnati in that game. And Joe Burrow they just look disjointed. Everyone had them winning the division. I don't even know if they're going to win the division. I don't know if in Baltimore, their defense got torched. So it looks like the Steelers are probably, again, one of the most squared away teams in the AFC North again. And they have a question at quarterback still, Mitch Trubisky or whatever, but those guys and TJ Watt has gone for a good amount of time. So, but they still look like, they're right at the top now. You know what I mean? With Baltimore getting torched the way they did, and Cincinnati getting torched the way they did, and then the Jets coming back and beating Cleveland by a point. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Again, Steelers might eke out, prior to where they had people coming in like this, a rebuild year for the Steelers, they might come in and win this damn thing, right? Based on from what I'm seeing now, and again, this is week two. It's not looking great, is all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying, right? So that's one. Let's go ahead and move to, let me see what else. Actually, no, to finish out the Dallas thing, I think Cooper Rush played pretty well. He put the ball in some good spots. He spread the ball around a lot. Can't hate him for that, but I think next week they're going to play the Giants, and the Giants are way more sound and they're way more disciplined than Cincinnati's defense is, in my opinion, right? If you look at how they played Carolina, and I think Baker Mayfield is better than Cooper Rush. I do. So, and the Giants like to run the ball, play good defense. That's kind of their thing this year. So let's go ahead and let's talk about one of the most impressive performances, pivoting to another AFC North guy, and that is Tua throws 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions versus Baltimore on 469 passing yards. Tua is out of control right now. Tua's playing great. And look, I like McDaniels, their head coach. I think he's a cool dude. And I think when a lot of, when you get to the locker rooms and you're just honest, you're just who you are. You're just like, even if you're a little bit nerdy, a little bit quirky, if you're just who you are in a lot of these locker rooms, like if you're just you're just like, hey, this is who I am, whatever. Guys respect it, and guys are willing to play for you. And I think that's what Mike McDaniels is. He's just himself. I think he's a brilliant play caller. And, with him going out and getting Tyreek, and having Jalen Waddle and having Mike Gesicki, and I think an underrated offensive line, I think those guys are going to be a problem as well. I still think that the Bills are going to win the AFC East, but I think that if anyone's going to give them a run, it's going to be probably Miami. So that's how I feel. I really, really do. I'm so happy for Tua, though. I'm happy for him because I think Tua, similar to Jalen Hurts, just got wrote off. Everyone was like, oh, this is just whatever. You can't go to Ryan Fitzpatrick this time. Granted, he had a shitty first 3 quarters, but when the rubber needed to meet the road, when it was do or die, when you had a chance to win, he showed out, and that's all you can ask for. You know what I mean? You just have to put the 3 quarters out of your mind and go and do your thing, and he went and did it. And so, got my respect. I think Tua and those guys are the real deal. Baltimore, that's a team now, right? That's a team that a lot of guys, have as a dark horse winning. But again, they also have a young defense, and it's week 2. So let's just see this play out. I think for me, week 4, 5, and 6 are the most telling weeks, because that's when the rust seems to come off of a lot of these teams, and you might see some good teams get, beat by some teams that are mediocre, around this time. And so for me, after next week after, like early October, late September, early October is when the rubber needs to meet the road, and you're going to start becoming who you are. The team's going to sort of take on an identity, or your team should start to take on an identity down that stretch, because that's when stuff gets real. So these next few weeks are going to be crucial for a lot of these young quarterbacks and a lot of these teams now. And I think the league is still going to get sorted out here in the coming weeks. So let's go ahead and jump ahead to week 3 predictions. That was news around the league. My thoughts on some of the more interesting things that happened throughout the league. But let's go ahead and talk about Philadelphia versus Washington. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to be playing the Washington Commanders. I believe it's at home. I could be wrong. Let me consult my Google thing. So I'm going to go Eagles Commanders. I think it's at home. I'm going to be honest with you. Excuse me. I have no clue. Where the hell is it? What the hell? What doesn't it say? It says versus. So, it is. Yeah, so it's in Washington. So the Eagles are going to be at Washington. They're going to be away next week. So, I honestly had no idea. I think the Eagles corners, I I think that I have three things that I like to focus on, and I'll give you some points about each. My three things are going to be Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin, the defensive line, and the O-line. Though that's always where things are going to start from me. So number one, Jahan Dotson. I think the corners need to play well. The corners have been playing they've been playing pretty good against. I think the Vikings were the first like top tier, like top 5 wide receiving core that they played against. That's not their own guys. It's not Devontae Smith and stuff like that. So I think they played pretty well against a pretty top shelf wide receiving core, and I think Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin are up there as well in terms of how squared away they really are. So Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, corner DBs need to play well. I think they did play well. I think another thing is Logan Thomas. A big question mark. I mean, Irv Smith is pretty good as a young guy, but Logan Thomas, I think, for the Commanders, has a much higher upside, and he's a dangerous dude, especially in the red zone. So I would like to see how the Eagles deal with him. I think it's probably going to be Kaiser White or something like that. That's going to be on him a lot, coverage guy. So, but I think the corners need to play well. I think they've answered the challenge so far. To keep an eye on Slay, though, he was kind of hobbled after his last interception versus versus Jetta's Justin Jefferson. He was kind of hobbled, so you got to keep an eye on that. Hopefully, there's nothing that's going to keep him out next week. Hopefully, they just kind of he rests and is able to practice. He's day to day, and then hopefully he's able to play and match up with those guys. If not, I do like Zach McPherson. I think James Bradbury played great. You really didn't even hear a lot about Adam Thielen, who I think James Bradbury was playing against a lot of the night. Towards the end of the night, he started to heat up a little bit, but again, James Bradbury is he's been playing really well. But even if there is one guy, I think Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, great route runners. Got to keep those guys under wraps. Second point is defensive line. I think they need to get to Wentz. I think Hassan Reddick needs to play more in the pass rush. Stop fucking dropping him in the coverage. Not to hate on his coverage thing, but that's not his forte. That's not like nobody drafted Hassan Reddick, a premier pass rusher, to cover. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to lose my mind if I see him covering Logan Thomas, right? I'm like, no, you need to be, sacking Carson Wentz. That's what you should be doing. So they need to get to Wentz. I think Aiden Hutchinson had a crazy game had 3 sacks. I mean, I don't think the Commanders have this crazy good offensive line either. I think they're kind of middle of the pack. I think, however, the defensive line for the Eagles is elite. Again, Hassan Reddick needs to be more of a pass rusher. I think Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham have been returning to form. Brandon Graham had a lot of good plays. He showed some really good pursuit. Chased down, I think it was Allison, I think is his name. A couple times, number 2 running back for the Vikings. He chased him down a couple times, got a couple, tackles from behind, pursuit, playing the game like that. So that was really cool to watch. And then Sweat had 2 sacks last night as well. So it's really good to see those guys returning to form. And then the O-line. Mailata has given up 1 sack to Daniel Hunter. Now, I don't say that as like, oh, look what he did. I say that because Daniel Hunter is a monster. I mean, the dude looks like an Adonis, right? Like, if you see him, I mean, he's this tall, muscular, yoked up dude. And, Mailata gave up 1 sack, right? And that's not normal, for things. So, yeah, I think that the offensive line is all right. I think the defensive line starts off a few paces ahead of the offensive line, at least as far as linemen go. Usually defense starts off a little hotter than the offense. But Washington, where I'm really concerned is their run defense. They have Allen, they have Deron Payne. So obviously they still have Chase Young and no disrespect, Montez Sweat. So, excuse me, that's a stout defensive line. and that's going to be a serious challenge for them. They did lose a little bit of depth. They lost Matt Ioannidis and stuff like that, but that's still a stout front seven. The weak point of this team is really going to be their back end, the safeties, defensive backs kind of thing. But that defensive line is stout, and it's going to be hard to run against them. I think it's going to be a repeat kind of Detroit, where Detroit also has a stout front. But yeah, I think it's going to be kind of the same at Detroit. I have Philly winning against Washington, going 3-0, and I have that score at 21-24 in favor of Philadelphia. Reason I say 24-21 is I like to keep it within a field goal. I think it's going to be a smash mouth game. If it's not, all the better, but I'm anticipating that the Eagles are going to have to win a couple of these smash mouth games. It's an in-division rivalry, so we're going to see them a couple times. So, and this is where it begins. This is where the road to, if you want to win the division, you want to make a playoff run, you have to beat your rivals, and Washington, the Commanders, are first on the list. So, I'm excited. I think it's going to be good. All four teams in the NFC East are going to be playing a division game. Obviously, Washington and Philadelphia. And then the next game we're going to talk about is Giants-Dallas. But for Philly, 24-21 in favor of Philadelphia winning against the Commanders. That's my prediction. If they could do all these things right and keep the ball in Jalen's hands, if he keeps taking care of the ball, then will be good money. So let's go ahead and transition to the Giants versus Dallas. I have the Giants winning 21-14. The reason I have them winning 21-14 is for the stuff that I mentioned earlier, which is they are way more disciplined as a defense than Cincinnati is. I think I'm not going to diss Cincinnati. Cincinnati's defense started off the same way. They started off kind of iffy, and then they got better down the stretch and played more disciplined down the stretch. But they're starting off again the same thing, a little less disciplined. They're allowing the run to happen, or they're not really putting up too much of a fight. I think once you get to the red zone, they sort of tighten up, but they're sort of the bend, don't break kind of thing. And Cooper Rush only had to score twice on them, which is what they did, 17 points. So I think that, again, Cooper Rush, again, they have these really good initial games, and then they sort of taper off, afterwards. And I think that it's going to start with the Giants. Again, Giants have a pretty good pass rush. Hopefully Leonard Williams comes back. Giants have a good pass rush. They have a good secondary, and Zeke is going to have to run the ball a lot. And I mean, who did they play? They played Carolina. Carolina couldn't run the ball at all. Carolina couldn't run the ball. They couldn't really get anything going. The defense really kept them guessing. They're a physical defense, and while they don't necessarily have Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari, who are the premier guys, I don't know if they're going to play for this game, but if they do play, then it's going to be. I think it's going to be a bloodbath, really, if they do play, because Dallas's offensive line is. They're not. Let me just say this: they're not as bad as I thought they were going to be. I thought they were going to be this awful. I thought their offensive line was going to be like Cincinnati, but it's not. They have Nick Martin up there, who, by all means, he's not the world beater that he was in previous years, but he is still like on Mount Rushmore of guards, right? Like the dude is a straight savage, right? And I think that this is a group of guys who, while they don't have any, outside of Zach Martin, they don't have any standout guy, like Tyron Smith obviously went down, but when they play together, they're young guys, they have a lot of snaps together, they know sort of how to play the game together, and I think that is important. But with that being said, Cincinnati doesn't really have a premier pass rusher, and it looks like the Giants have two. Or maybe even three, because I think Jimenez played pretty good. I watched the Giants game. I'm not gonna lie, I watched the Giants game thinking they were gonna lose, but they won. So shout out to Big Blue. But I don't know. I think that defense is way more squared away than Cincinnati, and I think that if they can get Saquon going against the run, then they'll be in a good spot. But I'm going to take the Giants 21-14, not a high scoring game. And that'll be my predictions moving into next week. So that's it for the show. It's a little bit longer than last week's in the pre-kickoff show, a little bit more to talk about. Plus we talked about 2 games. Next week, I'm going to try to release these either on Tuesday or on Wednesday, depending on when I record them. So keep an eye out. Next, again, either Tuesday or Wednesday, one of those 2 days. I'm going to try to keep it, consistent. Actually, you know what? We're going to go Tuesdays. We're recording this on Tuesday, so Tuesday around midday, I'll release these so you can listen. But until then, I'll see you next week. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Leave, comment, like, subscribe, all those different things. And if you like it, please just let me know. Let me know if there's something I could change, or something I could do a little bit differently. Let me know. If you want, there's some topics you guys want me to talk about, shoot me a DM on Instagram. I don't really get a lot of DMs, so just shoot me over. I'll try to get to you. Not even try to get to you. I probably will get to you, and I'll write it down. So with that being said, love y'all. Go Birds. 2-0. Heading into week 3. Let's get some shmoney. Love you guys. Bye-bye.